Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Um, my name is Major Contessa Walls. It's 13:56. We have our panelists on and we've done our mic check. Just for anyone who is already in, we will be recording this session so that we can distribute it far and wide. Just to orient folks, feel free to drop any questions, comments, or concerns into the chat section. We'll be monitoring that. And we'll get started here in the next 4 minutes. We're joined by the 1st Medical Recruiting Battalion Battalion Commander. So Colonel Vickers will have you introduce yourself once we get started, and then we'll circle around to our panelists. But looking forward to a great discussion that we're going to have with everyone. So we'll start soon. Okay, awesome. Well, good afternoon for those who just joined us. I know we had like a couple of stragglers coming in, but as I mentioned before, my name is Major Contessa Walls. I am the company commander for the Military District of Washington Medical Recruiting Company here in Elk Ridge, Maryland. And we fall under the 1st Medical Recruiting Battalion that is housed at Fort Meade. We're joined by our lovely battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Kayla Vickers. So once I orient everyone to just person, place, and time, we'll punt it over to her just so she can say a quick hello, and then we will get you all introduced to our lovely panelists who have graciously given us their time. We're looking at about 60 minutes, so really grateful for them. Just to orient folks, you can feel free to drop any questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring that between questions and answers from our panelists. This meeting is recorded, so we'll make sure that gets distributed out to those who are attending, and then also distribute it out far and wide, so that we can hopefully reach some more folks who are interested in coming into the great Army social work. So without further ado, we are here for our summer webinar series. This is our kickoff section, and I'm super grateful to be highlighting and showcasing the great Army social work. We're joined by, again, our battalion commander and then lovely panelists. So I'll punt it over to you, Colonel Vickers. Would you like to say hello?
Thank you so much, Major Walls. This is such an amazing initiative, and it's fitting to kick it off with our Army social worker. So I'm an optometrist and eye doctor by training, and I came through the Health Professionals Loan Repayment Program. But I will say we are so thankful for our social workers, and I'll tell a quick story about meeting one of my battle buddies, Lieutenant Colonel, well now Colonel Lataya Hawkins, who is an Army social worker, in the middle of the night, dealing with a soldier issue who was suicidal, and having suicidal ideations. And not only was she like my friend, but also the chief of behavioral health at Fort Cavazos, then Fort Hood at the time. Well, we were actually at Fort Benning, to be honest. And I knew that I could call her at 2 o'clock in the morning and that she would answer my call and let me know how to proceed with such a high risk patient. So you guys do some of the most critical work and the most critical hours of need. And I'm so thankful for those of you who are interested in pursuing Army social work. So thank you for having me, Major Walls, and thank you for putting this together. And then thank you all to our panelists for joining and to those who are interested for joining us today. Now I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, ma'am. Okay, so then we will kick it off by welcoming one of our first panelists, Major Kenneth R. Harris. Hopefully you all can see just a brief, very brief part of his bio, but he is currently the Program Executive Officer and Assistant Clinical Professor at U.S. Army University of Kentucky MSW Program, AMED Center of Excellence. He's a former Armor Officer turned Brigade Behavioral Health Officer. Major Harris supported 4,500 plus paratroopers with the 82nd Airborne Division's Immediate Response Force, including a 2022 deployment to Poland. He earned his PhD from UNC Chapel Hill, researching psychological resilience and military families. He's definitely someone that I have seen all across social media, and it's a huge honor to be able to have him here. So welcome, Kenny. Would you like to introduce yourself or just say hello to folks?
Hi, Tess. Thank you. Thank you, Colonel Vickers, for having us in on this call as well. I'm just excited to be a part of this discussion. I'm always interested in sharing information about the Army social work profession, as well as military social work. So I've been in the Army for about going on 15 years. So it's kind of hard to believe it's come to that point. Just for context, I'm married, have two kids. So it's been a family affair, been on this journey. So I look forward to being a part of this discussion.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay. And then second, we have Captain Cameron Ashdown. He is a Brigade Behavioral Health Officer and Clinical Operations Chief over the 30th Medical Brigade. I am not going to try to say that, but that is in Germany. Captain Ashdown enlisted in 2010 as a 92 Foxtrot and served 8 years before commissioning through the social work internship program. He's a trauma-informed clinician with a PhD from Our Lady of Lake University. Captain Ashdown also serves as an adjunct professor and was recently selected to the Army Baylor MHA program. Hey, Cam, how are you?
Hey, man. Hey, thank you all so much for the warm introduction and organizing this entire event. Yeah, much to what Major Harris said, like incredibly passionate about this line of work. And honestly, I wish this panel was available when I was, first going into commissioning. There's a reason why I selected SWIP, because I didn't know what was available until I was already in my other studies. So you're going to talk about some awesome things. And yeah, and for context, I too am married, have 3 girls, so real girl dad energy over here. My wife is a social worker. Shout out to her. She's over in Kaiserslautern right now while I'm enjoying Bethesda for our mental health conference. And yep, excited to be here. Hopefully can share some of our experience and really looking forward to meeting our future social workers.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then last but surely not least, Major Melissa Marcelli-Flint. She is a program director of training over the social work internship program at Fort Riley, Kansas. Originally, she commissioned as a military police officer. Major Marcelli-Flint her experience supporting wounded warriors led her to the Army's MSW program and recommissioned into the Medical Service Corps. She later built Fort Hood's first comprehensive soldier and family wellness program division-wide. Thank you so much for joining us, Melissa. Do you want to say hello?
Okay.
Yes, yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that warm welcome. I'm excited to be here. The fact you're doing this, I will echo what Cam said, that I wish something like this was around. Thankfully, almost 12 years ago when I started looking at the program, there was an Army MSW Facebook page that really informed. But I knew there was a point where I figured out social work is probably for me, and was thinking of actually getting out and using my GI Bill. And just one day, the power of Google was like, hey, there's an Army MSW program and let me explore this. And, you know, many years later, here I am. And also just want to share that it really is a small Army social work world. Major Harris and I have known each other since we both transferred to medical services. We went through the MSW program. We went to SWIP in Hawaii together. We went to the career course, and he's been a battle buddy throughout. And then I also had overlap with Cam for SWIP in Hawaii as well. So really a small world. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it definitely is a small world for sure. Okay, so we'll just jump right into the questions. Again, feel free, if there's any question that you have, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to that question. But so we'll just punt it off, or start it off rather, with what made you choose Army social work over a civilian clinical path? And feel free to go, whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in. So for me, I was grew up as an Army kid. So I was an Army brat growing up, and ended up choosing to go to college at George Mason University, which is up there in the DMV, not far from the Mental Health Conference. And after my first semester of college, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to really pay for school? Right. I had some small scale scholarships, but was trying to figure out how to pay for school. And I was very passionate about giving back to the military community, because I had grew up in that environment, and interacted with a lot of soldiers, and really wanted to serve in a counseling type profession. Right. So for me, it was, yes, I was interested in giving back to the military community, but it was also kind of a second or a benefit as well. And that is to cover the cost of school as well. Right. So that kind of drew me into an ROTC scholarship. And then during that time, during my undergrad, I was taking a lot of social science type courses. Again, I mentioned I was very interested in counseling. And at the time, I didn't even know I was interested in social work, but a lot of the classes I was taking had to do with social work type issues and research related things. And kind of the short of it is, ended up graduating. I don't know how many folks are on the call who did ROTC, but one of the things you may know about ROTC is you're not guaranteed your first branch choice. Right. So I remember getting called into my PMS's office, professor of military science, for those who may not be familiar. He called me into his office and said, hey, Kenny, the Army tried to do, or decided to do something kind of funky with your branch choice. So I'm like, okay, sir, say more. And long story short, he ended up sharing with me that I was branch detailed armor. From the Adjutant General Corps branch, right? So what that means is, for my first 4 years of the Army, I was going to serve as an armor officer, right? So for me, that wasn't really my top choice at the time. So I was trying to accept that, kind of come to terms with that a little bit. And then at the same time, I had also applied to U-Shoes as well. They have a clinical psychology program at the time, and I think a counseling psychology program. So I was still interested in those, but I was still in school, so I didn't meet the requirements for it. So that didn't work out. And then I ended up learning about social work kind of shortly after graduating. I learned about social work and saw that as another opportunity to still serve in the counseling profession, but to do that in a way to where I could give back to the military community and still stay in the military after fulfilling my ATSO from ROTC. So I think I answered your question, but it's kind of a interesting journey to get to that point. But I'm super glad that I think social work kind of found me a little bit, but glad to be a part of the profession.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Melissa, you want to go next?
Sure. So my journey a little bit different from the start. I had gone to school. I did my undergrad. I did a master's, kept moving around as a military spouse, and kind of back then felt like starting over career-wise. I always wanted to serve. So I did enlist. I initially went to AIT, but got pulled early for an OCS. Officer Candidate School slot. So I joined at 26. My husband was one that joined at 17. So our timelines were a little off from one another, but went to OCS. They kind of tell you, oh, you want to go medical services? Let's do it. Fill out a 4856 and we'll let you know what happens. I never learned what happened. So they never came back and they said, hey, you got these options. And so military police was always kind of my top one. Thankfully, I was able to branch transfer military police. The Married Army Couples Program is what brought me to my first assignment at Fort Lee, which was a training installation. And so there was not a full military police battalion. They had a detachment. Actually turned out to be the best possible thing that ever happened, because I worked as a patrol supervisor and they partnered with the Tri-Cities with a crisis intervention team. Meaning we looked at, when you pulled somebody over, when you apprehended somebody, based on their behavior, do they immediately need to go to jail? Can you release them? Or is there something potentially psychiatric going on? And so crisis intervention teams work to try to reduce the rate of individuals that are immediately jailed when a therapeutic intervention might be appropriate. So I had that going at the same time that my husband had come back from his last combat deployment, 4 of them back to back, and he was medically evacuated for basically he was in an explosion. And so navigating that partially played into me trying to say, what am I going to do with my future? Being dual military and a small child. And again, I had come across the Army's MSW program by accident, but that was only after seeing my husband get the absolute best care as an active duty service member. And I'm talking social workers can show up in all capacities, right? As case managers, as therapists, as that bridge. And so in every medical psychiatric capacity, coming back from a traumatic experience and also needing the physical rehabilitation, social workers were honestly always there. And they were the ones informing me, and they were the ones showing us like what the path to recovery looks like. And there were social workers advocating for him to get to the finish line, to hit 20 years, while also managing kind of the disability that, persisted beyond that. So again, I believe in social work as we really get to know the holistics that come into place and really understanding everything that goes into, whether it's the soldiers, the family members, and wanting to take care of others, while at the same time seeing that my husband got the absolute best care, and social workers were a big part of that and got him to the finish line, and he's living his best life retired now. So, and has kind of been my push to do these last 4 years to 20 and join him in retirement.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. And Cam?
Yeah, honestly, I love the messaging, and I think this isn't necessarily unique to just social work, but probably all helping professions in general. But ultimately, social work, yeah, like Major Harris said, you don't really find it. It's almost a calling, something that you like you feel from within. And yeah, ultimately, there's a big part of me that felt like being in a helping profession was, the place that I wanted to go. Wasn't entirely sure how that would play out. And like many other social workers, maybe more so outside of the military community. Like I'm a grateful, beneficiary of social work services, and just to see that level of care and the impact it made on my life, I made the choice pretty easy, and felt quite inspired to get back to the community. And so, yeah, ultimately, just spent some time in the military and met a BHO while I was out there, and that was my first interaction with like uniformed, behavioral services. I didn't know that was an option at the time. And once I heard from that, I was hooked, and I learned everything I could about that, and was wildly interested, and still look back on that interaction I had at that BHO down in Camp Bondsteel, Kosovo, and very much thank that person and that small lunch interaction and how it shaped mine and my wife's careers.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I definitely relate in that I've had a unique path from the start of joining way back when in December 2008, but grateful for all the opportunities that the Army provides to us. Okay, so then I know folks are really going to want to know this. So I'll jump to like the kind of day to day. And then I'll start with you, Cam. What does a typical week look like for you in your job? And then the second part of that question is how has your specialty or assignment shaped the kind of social work practice that you do and deliver?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm glad we have a pretty diverse panel to answer this, because the reality is that I think social work is different for most people. And the beauty of our profession is you're trained in systems, so you can modulate yourself and your training into a bunch of different contexts. So in my job, it's more dual hatted, where I serve as a behavioral health officer. And for those unfamiliar with that term, you're kind of seen as the subject matter expert for all things behavioral health in the organization that you're assigned to. And that consists of monitoring trends, managing, certain policies that inform, the commanders, efforts you make to try to help resiliency for the organization you belong to, and, interpreting trends and making recommendations. And so that's a fancy way of saying, like, half the time we're talking to commanders, giving them advice, responding to certain things that could happen. We are in a profession where life happens, crisis happens, and so you are often the first point of contact to help guide leaders through that, make recommendations, and oftentimes be that person who visits that service member in office by providing good clinical care. On the other side, I work in a clinical operations node, and that's just a fancy way of saying is that we've got an organization above us who, push out orders or things we'd like for our organization to do. So those orders filter down into our clinical operations team, and we just analyze that stuff, and we push that down to the organizations beneath us so they can execute missions that are ordered from the people above us. So it's a bit of a dual hat job, but I'd say for the most part, half of my job is more kind of like staff, analyzing, administrative work, and that other half is providing clinical care.
Okay, awesome. And then Melissa?
So I said from my time as a behavioral health officer. Since that time, I have done the Child and Family Fellowship, which the day-to-day for that, and that is at Walter Reed, the National Military Medical Center. And that is a 2-year fellowship focused on treating service members, children, and adult dependents. You do a lot of systems work, looking at family systems. And I really appreciated that experience. It was heavy on patient care, but also mixed in with didactics, psychoeducation, case presentations, Again, really understanding the different developmental stages, psychosocial stressors, and it really helped me better understand and reflect on my time as a BHO when I was seeing, the majority of the soldiers coming in asking for services or dealing with stress or adjustment related issues were like that 18 to 25-year-old population. And they would be talking about sometimes family stressors. And, finishing my BHO time and moving into that fellowship was an opportunity to really see like how the entire family system plays out. And a lot of times if a service member is not doing well and they're saying it's related to relationships, well, is there conflict with the child? Is there conflict with the spouse? And if we don't equip people with the support to kind of navigate that, it plays out in all kinds of ways. And thankfully, some of our soldiers, they ask for help. Others, they kind of fall through the system. And then others find themselves in trouble when really all they needed was some support for the stressors that may seem like nothing to us, but was very real. And so some of the stressors that, whether it's the families or the soldiers are dealing with, they don't have, it can be for a season. It doesn't have to last a lifetime, but really trying to dig in and figure out like what's behind this behavior. And that is something that I have learned. I didn't carry it with me when I was a BHO. I have carried it with me now ever since doing fellowship, that all behavior is a form of communication. And I think we really think about that with kids, because is it attention seeking? And are they trying to get good attention, or are they resorting to bad behaviors that still get our attention, right? And at the end of the day, sometimes the exact same is applicable for the soldiers we're seeing as behavioral health officers or as a hospital social worker or whatever it is. And so that was my time, child and family, was really doing patient care and balancing it with supervision, consultation, didactics, and just really understanding theory and applying it to practice. And then now I am the program director of training for the social work internship program. So I am now able to give back in ways that I was given many years prior when I was an intern. And so I tell my social work interns here, this is your time to learn. We are not going to use you as a workhorse. We are not going to burn you out. Like, this is your time to take all of that training, put it into practice, work through your discomfort, get all the evidence-based trainings, get all the consultation supervision, because once they go be BHOs, it's like, hey, it's time to go. It's time to make a difference. It's time to take care of the unit readiness, all of that. So my day-to-day right now is balanced between some patient care that I do to stay current in my own practice, but really taking care of, I have 7 social work interns here right now, all active duty, between year 1 and year 2, and just making sure that they have the support and that this truly is a time where they can get every possible training support to just set them up for success, because BHO time can be challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. And then Kenny?
Yes, yeah. So even just hearing Melissa and Cam talk about some of their experiences, to me, it really speaks to the fact that there are so many job opportunities in Army social work specifically. So I know for those of you who may be on the call, who may be interested in applying to one of our programs, I think that initial job, so initially you would be gaining clinical experience, working under someone like Melissa, really learning what it means to provide the best patient care, client care to the individuals and families you're working with. And then kind of you would move on to doing some of the BHO work, right? And honestly, I really miss being a BHO. That's really where the rubber meets the road. You're getting a chance to talk to soldiers regularly. You're connecting with civilians in some type of clinic. For me, it was embedded behavioral health clinic. And you're really getting to refine your skills while also providing what we call consultation and education to commanders and leaders within your organization that you're supporting. So to me, that was just a fun experience, an opportunity where it's really going to stretch you a lot. You'll encounter different things that you never thought you would face clinically, as well as just interacting with command teams within your organizations. So that's something that comes to mind for me in terms of the day-to-day things. And I think as a BHO, one of the challenges is finding ways to get out of the clinic to really be in your unit footprint. We call it battlefield circulation, but really going out, talking to soldiers in a motor pool, walking around the footprint, going to field training exercises to really build these relationships, because what it does is it helps you to connect with folks in your unit. It reduces any stigma associated with mental health that folks may have from their background, and it allows you to be able to provide optimal care to individuals. So I really want to highlight that BHO experience, because that's really where a lot of folks on the call may find themselves initially. For me, where I'm at right now, I'm working at we call it the Medical Center of Excellence. So this is where we train healthcare professionals for the Army, as well as for other service components as well. And at the Med COE, we have a master's in social work program, which I'm sure many of you have already heard about a little bit. And we provide a 15 months intensive master's of social work program to really produce social workers as quickly and as efficiently as possible, right? So that's a program that I came in. That's where I met Melissa initially. We were in that program together. But in my current role, I get an opportunity to be able to contribute to the development of future social work officers, right? So really in my role, I serve as the XO for the program. So I'm almost like their first line when it comes to military operations, military logistical things that may come up, ensuring that our students are able to pass their AFT, any types of Army requirements, and also to kind of model just military leadership, right? So to do that as well. So it's a steep learning curve. I'm learning a lot in this position, but I'm glad to be able to do that, as well as serving as an instructor or a professor within the program as well. So my day-to-day entails those different components. And Tess, thank you for that question, because that comes up a lot. Folks are always asking that, but it's difficult to answer because there are so many nuances to it as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you, all of you highlighting that. And I don't know if I mentioned at the top of it, but I know in our preparation for this discussion, we spoke about, the audience that's on the call, but then, who this will be circulated, who this will reach. And so it's students, right? They could be in their undergraduate, or they could already be in their graduate program, or somebody who's looking to pursue their MSW. And then we have a demographic of folks that are probably already have their MSW, but then looking more towards that internship so they can pursue licensure. And then there's the demographic of folks who want to continue on with their education and pursue the PhD route. But then we also have folks who are already fully qualified and very experienced, but then they just want to pivot and, come over into social work. And then finally, we're also joined by some lovely faculty, advisors and staff members who are the stakeholders, the educational stakeholders, if you will, but also, just those shepherds in being able to kind of market the different varying opportunities that Army social work has to offer. And so I love that you kind of rounded out with that, Kenny, because we're really wanting those educational stakeholders to really sell, if you will, to the folks that if you want a unique opportunity, if you want something that's going to grow you and stretch you in a variety of ways as a clinician, as a leader, as just a person, then Army social work is the way to go. So I think we'll jump into, so again, like we have quite a few folks like students, either providers that are already licensed, but then for the faculty members. So I think I will give it to Kenny. For the students, what should you know about the MSW program or SWIP eligibility and timing? And I think what I'll add to that is like how, if you were somebody getting ready to drop your application, like how can you be most competitive?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it would be getting connected with a healthcare recruiter in your local area. So that's that first entry point. And then also, if you're already in, gaining access to the meal per message, right? So there are meal per messages that come out each year about our program, about if you want to come in as SWIP only. Uh, that will give you kind of the basic eligibility criteria. So I would emphasize that. And then I would also emphasize sometimes the timing isn't right, right? And I really want to emphasize this because that's was my experience. So for me, I was coming on active duty in December of 2011. And right before I came on active duty as an armor officer, I mentioned I was branch detail, but I was really trying to get in a counseling profession. So had initially started a packet to the MSW program, and I learned that I didn't meet the eligibility criteria because I already had an ADSO from my ROTC scholarship, and the Army was waiting for me to fulfill that ADSO before I could pursue other opportunities. Right. So I want to mention that because I was it wasn't an outright no, but it was a delay. Right. And it ended up being a 4-year delay. So there's a lot of criteria on our meal per messages. There are different criteria like GPA, time and service requirements, criteria that says it's not waiverable. And then there's other criteria that maybe you would meet the requirements just at a different time. Right. So I've spoken with numerous folks who they've had similar stories to where they've applied and maybe they didn't get admitted the first time. So we try to encourage folks, please keep applying, right? Sometimes it just may not be perfect timing for you, but it doesn't mean that the opportunity isn't for you or this career path isn't for you. So I think the most important thing I would highlight really right now is getting familiar with the meal per message. Of course, you want to meet the basic requirements, but if there are requirements that don't say that it's not waiverable, then those are things that really in the Army you can pursue an exceptional policy for almost anything, right? So consider exploring those opportunities as well by reaching out to the POCs on the meal per messages. And please don't be discouraged, right? Because it may, like I said, it may be a delay, but it could be the best decision that you've made if you continue to be persistent in pursuing your application and your packet.
Awesome. Thank you. And Melissa or Cam, did you have anything else to add to that?
I would say I've seen throughout the different classes, there were people that had to apply a few times, and it was just, it's not because they weren't a strong applicant. It was just the pool was big, and there were certain factors that just kind of, had them on the OML instead because there were other folks that perfectly aligned with the criteria they wanted in the MILPER. But I would say we do it here at Fort Riley. We have here at Fort Riley a ton of enlisted and junior officers that they're doing something else, but somehow they've gotten familiar with social work. They know these programs exist. And again, relationships matter in everything. And so I have a PT tech specialist that has worked it out with her supervisor. She wants to eventually apply, and he is supporting some on-the-job shadowing so that when she builds her packet, she can say that she's already worked alongside the SWIP program director and has gotten to see some clinical exposures. And again, that's a self-starter move on her part of like, let me make sure this is really what I want to go for. let me keep showing up to my current soldier job, but let me work on advancing myself and still being able to wear the uniform. So I think that's the beauty of, if you're considering this, whether it is the Army's MSW or it is the 26-month social work internship because you've already completed your own MSW, figure out if there's an agency, a military installation right by you where you can start to get some shadowing experience just to make sure this does feel right. And this is the avenue I want to go. Because I'm confident that, I don't know if they still call it a statement of motivation, but that is a part of the packet. And you want to be able to confidently sell somebody on why you want to do this. And I would imagine when the board reviews it, they can tell what's genuine versus what might be some AI of, trying to sell yourself. And so get that exposure, talk to people. I can put my email in the chat after this. But even here at Fort Riley, we partner with the local universities, and they ask us to take their MSW practicum students. And we do, with the hopes that maybe they'll be drawn to military social work, and maybe they'll want to come to us as a GS civilian once they're independently licensed. Maybe they'll want to wear the uniform and do social work, but social work, we have to grow and develop the future providers. And we also want you to pour yourself into it, make sure it's the right fit before you start, preparing those packets.
Awesome. Thank you. And Cam?
Yeah. And yeah, great question. And ultimately, this is one that kind of filters our way quite a bit. It's like, how do I stand out? And there's two ways I normally answer this question when trying to get some advice. And one of them is, I'll start off by saying the bulk of counseling services that service members get are not from uniformed providers. It's from our civilian providers. And so my follow-up question for that is, why is there a need for social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists to put someone in green? And so there's a little bit of a distinction about like why someone is wearing green. And so you're going forward, you're going alongside with them. And the metaphor I love to use to help them inform their statement of motivation is a bit of imagery. It's like, imagine you're on a ruck march, with your peers, and someone comes to you with advice during that ruck march. And I feel like military social work is that way. Like, you're doing something with your unit, boots on ground, but you're also providing care at the same time. So can you sell that in your statement of motivation that I'm willing to go there, be a soldier, do the soldier things, and understand what it means to be a soldier and understand military culture? But I can also harness, what NASW expects of us and do what makes social workers great in a military context. The better that you can manage and sell that dynamic, the more you're going to be able to sell yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's definitely some nuggets dropped. Let's stump that for everybody. So a couple of people did drop some questions in the chat, so I want to get to those. First, from Amy, thank you so much for joining us. She says, hi, I have my LCSW already and interested in joining. How would you say that experience is different than someone doing SWIP?
Yeah, I can jump into this one right here, and I'll speak about my wife, who's in that same exact dynamic. So, and I love that Major Harris and Major Flint mentioned this. My wife applied once and timing didn't work out. So second time around, she was fully licensed, did great things. And honestly, there's a bit of a learning curve. The MSW program in SWIP really, gives you that opportunity to, to learn and shadow all that fun stuff. But I do find that in this profession, and please, if other folks can share this, let me know. But I do find that folks in this line of work are incredibly helpful. And you're going to go to an organization, you're going to work with a branch manager, and you're going to have we have a whole support team by virtue of our social work consultant that have your interests, their best interests for you. And they're going to do their best to put you in a position where you can continue to learn and adapt, not going to throw you into the fire, so to speak. And you'll also have your peers who are incredibly helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Kenny or Melissa, did you have anything to add to that question?
I was going to say again, like I'm very big, relationships matter, right? And so it doesn't matter how long you've practiced. I mean, we all need consultation. We all need supervision. If there's a willingness to figure out that learning curve, like Captain Ashdown was talking about with his spouse, there are people that will make that happen. And again, you know, that's amongst your peer group and supervisors, consultants, all that. But also as a BHO, when you're working with those force comm leaders, like you show a willingness to learn and be present and willing to take it in, you're going to have their buy-in. You're going to have a seat at the table. What you do with that learning curve is what's going to shape the way it goes for you.
Awesome. Kenny, anything to add to that question?
I don't think I think you all definitely answered it thoroughly. I don't really have anything else to add. I will maybe speak to a little bit from a different perspective, and that's maybe I think there are benefits that you would bring to the table from your civilian experiences that some of us in uniform just aren't going to have, right? There are certain types of clinical experiences that we're slated to receive during our SWIP rotations that are very comprehensive, right? From substance abuse to family advocacy to embedded behavioral health, tons of different opportunities. However, I found in talking to civilian clinicians, there are a lot of unique perspectives and experiences that you all receive as well that are just different, right? So I'm not going to say one is better than the other. It's just different, right? And then also I'll add that for folks who do decide to come through SWIP, I think that the benefit may be in terms of building relationships a little bit earlier with some of your peers, right? I think Melissa mentioned earlier that all three of us met during SWIP, right? So I think that there are some benefits to both avenues, but please don't allow that to discourage you from moving forward if you really feel called to serve within this profession.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so then we have a question from Miss Karen Chapman, who said that she's actually a program field coordinator who helps MSW students locate placements. Super grateful for you all for your time and expertise. And so the question is, does the Army Medical Department in this district partner with civilian universities for traditional MSW field placements? And if so, are students typically assigned to field instructors who hold an MSW with some experience and is their opportunity to cover all the CSWE competencies? She dropped that in the chat, so if I missed anything, feel free to look at it. But thank you again so much, Ms. Chapman, for joining us. So whoever would like to answer.
And she's specifically asking about DC, correct?
I would think so.
When I left Walter Reed, there were talks about potentially trying to not have a full SWIP site there. But if she is trying to place MSW students into a practicum within the military, yes, all the CSWE competencies can be met. When I design didactics, group supervision, we do have to pull the competencies in, and I have to document when and how they're being met. But if there's not already a partnership with Walter Reed, for example, it would come down to really either, they probably call theirs a GME, graduate medical education. Smaller hospitals call it hospital education and training. But if she can get linked up, I'm happy to help facilitate that if need be. But it would basically be having an MOU on file to be able to send practicum students. And then anyone, the bare minimum is 2 years. Some states it's 3 years post MSW to provide clinical supervision. It's just dependent on licensure state.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then we'll definitely make sure, Ms. Chapman, that you get linked in with our panelists afterwards if you have any follow-up questions. And I'm happy to facilitate, getting you connected with them, but then also answering any questions from my end too. Okay, and then we did have another question from Elaine. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. She says, pronounced Alon. Alon, thank you so much. I'm curious how the Army prepares social workers for dual relationships, since you're both an officer/soldier in the unit and a therapist, unlike civilian settings where client contact stays in the clinic. I see Cam smiling. So Cam, you want to kick that one off and then we'll punt it to Kenny?
Yeah. I'll try to answer this from a broader level. You'll notice real quickly when you go into this profession, not necessarily like social work, but probably other helping professions, is that your professional code of ethics and then your role as a military officer, they may not fit perfectly together in pieces. And so the idea of having real separate relationships is hard, if not impossible, especially when you're in a forward environment. And so for context, we would go forward and I would see a service member, and then we're eating dinner in the same place past each other at the shop. It is one of those realities. And so in those moments, when we are trained in ethics, we just try to do what's ethically best in those moments. We try not to do any harm. We set boundaries. We have hard conversations. When we meet service members, much like any other traditional therapeutic meeting, you're going to go over your limits of confidentiality. And one of the unique things that we say in this line of work is that, what happens here stays here, aside from things we need to report. But we are going to interact with each other. And this is how I'm going to behave. I'm going to be professional. And in that context, I'll be a consultant, I'll be a peer. But in this office where we're practicing, the way that we interact varies based off of, honestly, where we are at. And that's something that is unique to our field and something that you certainly learn to navigate. And, that's one of many examples that shows up where, our profession's a bit unique. Great question.
Tess, I'll chime in on that as well, and just second everything that you've mentioned already, Cam. And I think that honestly, serving as a healthcare professional in the military in general, but specifically in the Army, I think that all of the healthcare professionals have to deal or navigate the duality of different relationships, right? Even down to whether you're a chaplain, right? You're still in the unit, but you're also talking to folks about just confidential type information as well. So for us, it's no different. However, you do have to be just very careful and delicate in how you interact with people outside of the clinical setting, right? And just a very practical example that comes to mind right now is that I've run into some clients on post, like in the PX or at the commissary, and some are willing to come up and dap me up and say, "Hey, what's going on, sir?" Right? And they're open. And then I have others who they kind of don't really want to make eye contact for whatever reason. So it's something just kind of respecting the boundaries there and kind of sensing them and just respecting them. But then recognizing that same client who is nervous about seeing you in a different setting may be willing to just walk in and say, "Hey, how's it going?" when they step into your office, right? So I think just recognizing that we have a saying that goes, you want to go with where your client is. And so even outside of the clinical settings, that'll be important as well. And it's good to see Alan on the call. I've interacted with him a few times as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. And we did have a question from Timmy. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I'm currently an enlisted Army Reserve soldier, and I already have my MSW, but I have not yet obtained my LMSW. Is there any waiver or exception to the master's level licensure requirement for current enlisted soldiers, or must I have the LMSW before my application can be considered for SWIP?
Yeah, I don't, so for me, I didn't, but that was back in 2018. I didn't need an LMSW, but the state I was licensed is the state of Utah. And so Utah was a little unique where you can take your clinical licensure immediately after you complete your master's degree, and then you're fully licensed after obtaining your hours. And so that was 8 years ago, and maybe things have changed. So I'm leaving you with a big maybe.
Yeah, Timmy, I think what we'll do for sure is like we'll get your contact information and then we can submit up an RFI, so request for information to the program coordinator, who can definitely field a question like that. But thank you so much for being here and asking that question. So then I'll jump down to one from a long-term mentee of my own. Ben, thanks so much for being here. This is from Captain Ben Middleton. What continuing education opportunities are available to Army social workers, both master's or doctoral?
I'll chime in a little bit and then I'll punt it to my colleagues here. The first thing that comes to mind for me is so there are different, so I'm assuming the person is thinking about formal CEU type trainings. There are a plethora of different CEU training opportunities available for folks in uniform. So there are some courses, like we have what's called the FAST course. That's here at MedCOE. That's something that I recall going through some years ago, but that's a course that provides training for folks who may find themselves working in the family advocacy type realm. We have trainings like that. We have a SUDC, substance use disorder clinical care type course that some CEUs can be earned through there. As well as there's an organization called the ABCSW, American Board of Certified Social Workers, I believe, if I'm that acronym. However, they provide different trainings also periodically that are available for active duty social workers. And one of the things that comes up is we have a conference, which I think Cam is maybe there right now. So I'll let him speak a little bit more to that, but that's another opportunity where folks can earn CEU type trainings. Do you want to speak more to that, Cam, at all?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that I'm over here right now just to enjoy some of that. And for the entirety of my licensure, I haven't had to spend a dime for CEs. And so there is an emphasis on continued investment that many of us have been able to take advantage of to better ourselves as professionals. Additionally, there'll be some organizations you belong to who may have funding set aside specifically for your medical competencies and development. So the organization I belong to, it's pretty much made up of medical professionals. And so in our budget, they set aside some funding for us to obtain further education, even outside of the military training, like opportunities. So yes, lots of great training opportunities and certifications that you can use now that'll benefit you when you do take off the uniform.
For sure. Foot stomp that for sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay. And then we're also joined by Joshua Ryan. Thanks so much, Josh, for being on. And his question is, what is the process like for a new social worker, current active duty member to go from blue, sister service, to green, Army? Melissa, you smile, so I'll put that one to you.
I'm laughing because there's here at Fort Riley, we have he is getting promoted to 04 tomorrow, which is Lieutenant Commander, but he actually switched from Army to Public Health Service. However, I knew him was in the MSW program. He was a 68 X-ray tech in the reserves, and he applied for the SWIP program, got accepted. went to Fort Hood and earned his clinical licensure there, went to Fort Bliss, was a behavioral health officer, and said, I want to take a change of pace, and went public health service, which has a lot of beautiful opportunities. And he's right here at Fort Riley, still messing with the Army, still taking care of Army providers and Army service members, obviously. So he never really did get away from us. But I haven't had too much experience of other services coming to us. I have actually often seen it Army going to other services. So hopefully someone else can chime in on that one.
I can speak a little bit to it. So we had a student who just graduated this past May, and she was transitioning over from the Air Force. I think she was an NCO in the Air Force and then transitioned into our program. But one of the key, I guess, unique aspects of the application process for those individuals from other branches of service would be most of the aspects of the meal per message apply. However, there is a component where you have to apply for a conditional letter of release from your current sister service. Right. So once you complete that conditional letter of release, acknowledging, or basically it's your service acknowledging that they'll release you if you're admitted into the program, then our folks at HRC, they can work their magic to help you transition over to the Army side once you're accepted into the program. So it's definitely an option, but I would encourage you to still take a look at the meal per message and just look at that differentiation when it comes to your conditional letter of release. Over.
Yeah, and I think just shameless plug here too is like hopefully folks have heard about this and to some degree, large scale combat operations, and then the word joint. So we just cannot be preparing for large scale combat operations without speaking about how we are going to interact and to practice in interdisciplinary settings and just in joint settings. So definitely what Melissa said and Kenny said as well, that no matter what uniform you're wearing, you might have anybody like in your seat. So awesome. Okay. And then we're about like 3 minutes away from ending. So any last minute questions from anyone, please feel free to drop them in the chat. While you all are doing that, I just want to make sure that I give a couple minutes to thank you all so much, Melissa, Kenny, and Cam, for being on and giving us your time. For those on the call, like this was a quick pivot for sure. It was definitely an idea that's been in my mind as a commander for several months. But then definitely came to fruition like over these past couple of weeks. So thank you all so much again. You all have dropped some amazing nuggets. I have your contact information. If it's okay, we'd love to be able to share that out to folks. Hopefully you all have seen in the dashboard here that in their bios, you should see a link to Kenny and Cam's LinkedIn. So I know they're always on there, so that's a place to hit them up, but then we'll make sure that you all have their email addresses. We'll make sure that you have Melissa's email address as well. You'll have my contact information. I have some of my amazing recruiters on the line as well, so we can facilitate getting you connected with him if you want to learn a little bit more about your individual processes and steps that you have to take to pursue some of these amazing programs. And so I think there was one other question. Okay, so we'll round it out. Whoever wants to like do the mic drop on this. Do you have any advice to anyone who wants to come into one of these programs? No pressure. Maybe we'll do like a little test. Like if you had to give a one word piece of advice to everyone, Melissa, we'll start with you.
It's 3. Can I go with 3?
You said what?
Mine's 3. I would say just do it.
Okay.
And if it doesn't if you don't love it or it's not what you thought, there's also opportunities to pursue something else. And there's always a need. And once people get in, we switch them around all the time. We do try to support their personal and professional goals while still being able to accomplish kind of the social work, mental health mission.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
One
I'll jump
word
in
piece
quick.
of advice. Yeah, Kenny?
Yeah, I would just say be persistent. I gave one example of how it didn't work out. There was another example as well. Just please be persistent. Don't give up if you get one no. That's what I leave folks with.
I love that. Don't give up if you get one no. And Cam, last but not
Yeah.
least.
No, just pressure's on. I would just say like, hey, like put the social in social work. The reason why it was an easy yes when Major Walls messaged me is that I'm a beneficiary of both Major Harris and Major Flint. You know, they supported me and we've all supported each other. And so, you know, we heard a lot about like reaching out to people, shadowing. They're happy to help you out. And when you come to the profession, make sure to pay it forward, help out. There's lots of people waiting for you when you commission that need your guidance and your expertise. So looking forward to you to hopefully be on our team.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any closing comments, ma'am?
I just want to say one, thank you to the panelists, absolutely amazing. And then to those who joined, such great questions, so thoughtful, so intentional. I think the last piece of advice I would have is this was the best decision I could have ever made. I was very hesitant about coming into the Army. My husband was already active duty and convinced me to do it, but it's been 17 years later and I'm still here. I thought I'd only do that initial 3. So whether you do your initial contract or you're a career soldier like we are, I would say go ahead and give it a try. It can only show you that you're stronger than you really think you are, and then you're doing something to give back not only to your social work community, but to the Americans that we serve.
Awesome. Thank you all so much again. Thank you all so much for your time, and we will be in touch. And please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.